I was talking to this guy Marcus last week, mid-30s, good job, kind, never raises his voice. And his girlfriend had spent the entire weekend criticising him about dishes he forgot to put away, a text he didn't respond to fast enough, and the way he parked the car. He said something that stuck with me. I do everything she asks, I try not to argue, I just want peace. But the more I give in, the worse it gets. What am I doing wrong? Here's what's actually happening underneath that behaviour. Marcus isn't doing anything wrong morally. But psychologically, he's triggering something he doesn't realise exists. And once you understand this dynamic, you'll see why the kindest, most agreeable men often end up in relationships that feel like endless cycles of complaints, nagging and resentment. So let me ask you something. Why do good men get nagged the most? Your first instinct might be to say, because women are never satisfied. Or maybe, because men don't pull their weight. Both of those answers miss the point entirely. Research shows women are more likely to nag largely because they're conditioned to feel more responsible for managing home and family life, and they tend to be more sensitive to early signs of problems in a relationship. But here's the part neither side ever explains to the other. The nagging isn't really about the dishes, it's not about the text, it's about something happening at a psychological level that nobody's talking about. What if I told you that the very qualities that make a man good, in the traditional sense, agreeable, conflict avoidant, eager to please, are the same qualities that can trigger a woman's instinct to criticize, test, and lose respect? That doesn't mean being a jerk is the solution. It means we need to understand what's actually happening beneath the surface when a woman nags and when a man complies. Hypergamy is a psychological mechanism describing how women tend to seek partners who are of higher social status, possess better resources, and demonstrate qualities like intelligence, strength, and social influence. In simpler terms, women often unconsciously look for men who they believe are more successful or capable than themselves. Now stay with me. This isn't about money. It's not about being superior. The concept is rooted in evolutionary psychology, where historically women sought to secure resources and stability for themselves and their offspring. But in modern relationships, this dynamic shows up in ways most people never connect. When a woman perceives her partner as equal to or slightly above her in competence, confidence, or emotional stability, she feels safe. When she perceives him as beneath her, not in worth as a human, but in his ability to lead his own life, make decisions, or hold boundaries, something shifts. And this is the part that changes everything. She starts testing him, not consciously, not maliciously, but instinctively. She criticizes the small things to see if he'll stand his ground. She complains to see if he'll collapse or if he'll calmly hold his position. She nags to see if he has a backbone or if he'll endlessly accommodate to avoid conflict. A 2014 study found that in most marriages, women are more likely to comply with a request the first time they're asked than men are. So here's what that means. When a man constantly needs to be asked multiple times to do something, the woman isn't nagging because she enjoys it. Nagging is a form of repetitive persuasion, a response to the other person's constant failure to complete a requested task. But here's where it gets complicated. What about the men who do comply immediately? The ones who say yes to everything? Those men get nagged even more, and nobody explains why. Because compliance without conviction reads as weakness. A man who always says yes, who never pushes back, who never has his own opinion, who folds every time there's tension. He's not being kind, he's being passive. And passivity in a man triggers a very specific psychological response in a woman. She doesn't feel led, she doesn't feel safe. She feels like she's dating a child she has to manage. And when that feeling sets in, respect erodes. When respect erodes, attraction follows, and when attraction fades, criticism fills the space. Most people get this completely wrong. They think nagging is about household tasks or forgotten errands. The truth is, what we call nagging usually isn't about the original, request. It's often a signal about something deeper, an unmet emotional need that's unrelated to the issue. So the real question becomes, what's the unmet need? For many women, it's not that they want a man who argues or dominates. It's that they want a man who has his own centre of gravity, a man who can say no when no is the right answer, a man who doesn't dissolve under pressure, a man who can hold space for conflict without collapsing into people-pleasing. When a man can't do that, the woman unconsciously begins to feel like she's in a relationship with someone beneath her, not in value, but in psychological solidity. And that perception, whether fair or not, activates the hypergamous instinct. She starts looking for signs that he's capable, that he's strong, that he won't fold under life's real pressures, and when she doesn't find those signs, the criticism increases, the testing intensifies, the nagging becomes relentless. Now here's what happens on the man's side. He thinks, if I just keep the peace, if I just agree, if I just do what she asks, things will calm down. But they don't. Because what she's actually asking for, beneath the surface, isn't compliance. It's leadership, not dominance, not control, but the ability to lead his own life, to have his own boundaries, to stand firm when something matters to him. Psychologically, nagging triggers what therapists call a pursuer-distancer dynamic. The pursuer feels anxious and unheard, so they push harder. The distancer feels controlled, so they withdraw. But in many cases, the man isn't withdrawing emotionally. He's just complying. And the woman isn't pushing because she wants control. She's pushing because she needs to feel like her partner is solid enough to resist her when resistance is appropriate. Think about that for a moment. She needs him to resist her, not out of stubbornness, but out of self-respect. When he can't, she loses respect for him. And when she loses respect, the relationship enters a cycle where nothing he does will ever feel like enough. Let me give you a concrete example. A woman asks her partner to cancel plans with his friends because she's had a hard week and wants him home. He immediately cancels. No hesitation, no pushback, just, okay babe, whatever you need. On the surface, that looks like love. But psychologically, something else just happened. She just learned that his commitments don't matter, that his word to his friends is negotiable, that his boundaries are non-existent, and that if she pushes, he folds. Now next week, when something comes up again, she'll push a little harder. Not because she's cruel, but because part of her is testing to see if there's a limit. If there's a point where he'll say, I hear you, but I already committed to this. Let's figure out another way to support you. If that moment never comes, the respect continues to erode. And here's where the hypergamy piece becomes critical. Evolutionary psychology perspectives on human mating behavior have documented this asymmetry repeatedly. Women weighting resources and status, men weighting physical cues. But in the modern world, status isn't just about money or job titles. It's about psychological status, confidence, boundaries, the ability to hold your own position without aggression but also without collapse. When a woman perceives that her partner lacks that, the hypergamous instinct activates. She doesn't want to leave, but she starts feeling a low-level dissatisfaction that she can't quite name. And that dissatisfaction often expresses itself as criticism. Now let's flip the script for a second. What about the men who do push back? The ones who have boundaries? The ones who can say no when no is the right answer? Those men get nagged far less. And when they do get nagged, it doesn't stick. Because the dynamic is different. When a man has a solid sense of self, when he's not afraid of conflict, when he can calmly hold his position without being defensive or dismissive, the woman feels something completely different. She feels like she's with someone who can handle life, someone who won't crumble under pressure, someone she can actually relax with because she doesn't have to manage him, and that right there is everything. The moment a woman feels like she has to manage her partner, emotionally, logistically, psychologically, the relationship shifts. She stops being his partner and starts being his mother, and you can't be sexually attracted to someone you have to parent. Contempt is the worst of the four horsemen in relationships. It's the most destructive negative behavior, and in Dr. John Gottman's 4 decades of research, he's found it to be the #1 predictor of divorce. And here's the thing, nagging often evolves into contempt. It starts as requests, then it becomes criticism, then it turns into something darker, eye rolls, sarcasm, dismissive comments. Treating others with disrespect and mocking them with sarcasm are forms of contempt. As a hostile humour, name-calling, mimicking and body language like eye-rolling and sneering. In whatever form, contempt is poisonous to a relationship because it conveys disgust and superiority, and once contempt sets in, the relationship is on life support. So how does this tie back to hypergamy? People often seek mates who can enhance their social standing or provide economic stability, and studies indicate that people from higher socioeconomic backgrounds prioritize traits like education and career success in potential partners, while those from lower backgrounds may focus more on emotional support and shared values. But again, in the modern context, resources can mean emotional resources, psychological resources, a man who can't regulate his own emotions, who folds under pressure, who has no boundaries, he's resource poor in the psychological sense. And that triggers the same instinct as being resource poor financially used to trigger in ancestral environments. The woman doesn't consciously think, this man is beneath me. But unconsciously she feels it. And that feeling shows up as chronic dissatisfaction, criticism, and nagging. Now here's what most relationship advice gets wrong. They tell men to communicate better or help out more around the house. And while those things matter, they're not the core issue. The core issue is psychological solidity. Does this man have a sense of self that exists independently of her approval? Does he have boundaries he's willing to defend? Does he have the emotional capacity to handle conflict without collapsing into agreeableness or exploding into anger? If the answer is no, no amount of dishwashing or love language learning will fix the dynamic. Because the woman isn't nagging him about the dishes, she's nagging him because she doesn't respect him. And she doesn't respect him because he doesn't respect himself enough to have boundaries. Let's talk about what this looks like in practice. A man with boundaries doesn't refuse every request. He's not stubborn or controlling. But when something genuinely matters to him, he holds his ground, calmly, without apologizing, without needing her permission. He might say, I hear that you want me home tonight, but I already committed to helping my friend move. I'll be home by 8, and we can have dinner together. Does that work? Notice the structure of that response. He acknowledged her. He didn't dismiss her. But he also didn't fold. He offered a solution that honors both his commitment and her need. That response communicates respect. For her and for himself. And when a woman experiences that kind of response consistently, the nagging stops. Not because she's being controlled, but because she finally feels like she's with someone who can handle himself. Now let's address the uncomfortable truth. Some women won't respond well to boundaries, especially if the relationship has been built on the man's compliance for years. When he finally starts saying no, she might escalate. She might accuse him of being selfish or uncaring. She might threaten to leave. And this is where the man has to decide. Am I willing to lose this relationship to keep my self-respect? Because if the answer is no, he'll fold again, and the cycle continues. But if the answer is yes, if he's willing to risk the relationship to preserve his sense of self, something fascinating happens. Most of the time, she doesn't leave. She adjusts. Because what she actually needed was to see that he could hold his ground, that he wouldn't dissolve under pressure, that he was solid. And once she sees that, the dynamic shifts, the testing stops, the nagging decreases, the respect returns. Gottman's research found that happy couples maintain a ratio of at least 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction. During conflict, this ratio drops to 5 to 1, while couples heading for divorce show ratios closer to 0.8 to 1, or worse. So here's the practical takeaway for men. Stop trying to avoid conflict by saying yes to everything. Conflict isn't the enemy. Lack of self-respect is. Start practicing boundaries in small ways. Say no to something that genuinely doesn't work for you. Not aggressively, not defensively, just calmly and clearly. And when she pushes back, because she will, hold your ground. Don't argue, don't defend, just repeat your position and let her feel the discomfort of not getting her way. That discomfort isn't cruelty, it's recalibration. She's learning that you're not a man who can be managed, and that realization, as uncomfortable as it is in the moment, is what restores respect. Now here's the takeaway for women. If you find yourself constantly nagging your partner, ask yourself this: am I actually upset about the thing I'm complaining about? Or am I upset because I don't respect him? Because if it's the latter, no amount of him doing the dishes or remembering to text back will fix it. The issue isn't his behaviour. The issue is that somewhere along the way you stopped seeing him as your equal. And if that's true, you have two options. One, communicate what you actually need. Not more chores, not more attention, but more psychological solidity. Tell him, I need to feel like you have your own life, your own opinions, your own boundaries. I need to feel like I'm with someone who won't just fold every time I'm upset. 2, accept that maybe he's not capable of that right now, and decide if you're willing to stay in a relationship with someone you don't respect. Because staying and punishing him with contempt is the worst option for both of you. Here's what all of this comes down to. The men who get nagged the most aren't the worst men. They're often the kindest and most well-intentioned men. But kindness without boundaries isn't attractive. It's exhausting. Because it puts the woman in the position of having to lead, manage, and carry the psychological weight of the relationship. And when that happens, the hypergamous instinct kicks in. Not because she's shallow, not because she's cruel, but because she's human. And humans are wired to seek partners who feel like equals or slightly above them in psychological strength. When a man collapses into compliance, he signals that he's beneath her. And that signal, no matter how much she loves him, triggers dissatisfaction. The solution isn't to become dominant or controlling, it's to become solid.